Hi guys, this video is on ecosystems. By the end of this video, you should be able to define ecology, ecosystem, and niche, explain the organization from species to biome, describe the different trophic levels and give examples of organisms in each level, explain the rule of 10, and draw a food. So ecology is the study of relationships between organisms and their environment. And an ecosystem is a community of organisms and their physical environment. So ecology is basically the study of systems. The word niche defines an organism's lifestyle. So that means its habitat, its nutrition, what it eats, how it eats it, and its home range. And home range is all the area that an animal covers in its lifetime. Ecological organization starts out with a species. And so you have a species, and a population is one group of that species in a particular area. So in this picture you see there's a frog, and this frog species probably occurs in lots of places around the world, or at least around a state or a country, but the group of frogs that are right in this area we would call a population. And then all the populations of different organisms, population of water lilies, population of turtles, population of fish, population of ferns, all that are in one area, we call that a community. And then the ecosystem, it goes one step beyond that, and it includes abiotic factors. So remember, abiotic is non-living. So it includes all these living populations, that community, and then it adds in the non-living, things like the water and the atmosphere, the air, and you see a little bit of sunshine there, and the rock, things like that are the abiotic factors that make it an ecosystem. And then all of the ecosystems of a similar type, like all of the deciduous forest ecosystems, they make up a deciduous forest biome across the world. All of the tundra ecosystems make up the tundra biome, and so on. We'll talk more about biomes later. So trophic levels describe the flow of energy through an ecosystem, and basically they are laid out by what animals eat or how they eat. So the first trophic level are producers, and producers are autotrophs. If you remember that word, it means that they make their own food. They're self-feeders. So most of the time that's plants. There's some other things that can do photosynthesis, but mostly plants are the producers. Then there's primary consumers. So primary is like the first level, right? First level of consumers, and they eat the producers. So they eat plants. So they're herbivores, right? And then secondary consumers eat herbivores. So they eat the trophic level that was right before them. So they are carnivores. They're eating those herbivores. There's also tertiary consumers, and they eat other carnivores. So they eat the level that was right before them. And then there's decomposers. They're things that break down other organisms, and they'll break down all of these other trophic levels. They're things like fungi and bacteria. So this is a way that you often see the trophic levels laid out in an energy pyramid, where producers are on the bottom. So plants, other photosynthetic organisms are going to be on the bottom. They're the producers. Primary consumers are one step up from that. They eat the producers. Secondary consumers are one step up from that. They eat the primary consumers. Tertiary consumers are one step up from that. They eat the secondary consumers. The reason it's called an energy pyramid is because as you go up the pyramid, energy is lost. So there's a whole bunch of energy here in the very first trophic level with the producers, right? Well, when the producers get eaten by the primary consumers, energy is lost. These little grasshoppers can't harness all the energy that's in these plants, and some of that energy is lost because through digestion, some doesn't get absorbed. Some of their energy is used in eating it, things like that. And what's kind of amazing is each step up the energy pyramid, only 10% of the energy gets transferred from one level to the other. So that's why you see 1,000 kcals, that's like 1,000 calories. If there's 1,000 calories of the producers, only 100 calories of it really gets transferred onto these primary consumers, the grasshoppers. And again, only 10% of that gets transferred up to secondary, and only 10% of that gets transferred up here. You lose a lot of energy going up the energy pyramid. And that's called the rule of 10, that only 10% of energy is transferred from one trophic level up to the next. It's really important to think, okay, we've got all those producers on the bottom, right? Where do the producers get their energy from? So where does all the energy come from in the first place? And this is the answer to the question, where does all the energy in the whole world come from in the first place? Can you think of the answer? The sun! Yes, the wonderful sun provides all of the energy for our entire world. So let's talk about food webs. You might have heard of food chains, but more realistic is to call the food web because it's a lot more complex than just a simple chain. When you see a food web, the arrows point to where the food is going. So when you see a food web, you think, okay, the arrow is pointing because it's going into the belly of that thing that the arrow goes to. So let's look at this food web here, where let's start out with these terrestrial plants. Okay, the terrestrial plants are going into the belly of the snail. The snail is going into the belly of the grasshopper. The grasshopper, lucky duck, is food for a shrew, a rat, a sparrow, and a mallard. Goes into the belly of all those things. The sparrow, let's say, then goes into the belly of the owl. So in that example that I just showed, going from terrestrial plants, those are producers. The snail is a primary consumer. Grasshopper is secondary consumer. Sparrow is tertiary consumer. And in this food web, we actually have a quaternary consumer, like a fourth level consumer. And so in different ecosystems can support different levels of trophic levels. And so you see, though, that it's not a simple chain because there's multiple things eating different things. But you should be able to kind of decode a food web by looking at the arrows, and you should also be able to draw a food web if you were given information about what different organisms eat. So think about, how would you draw a food web in this ecosystem? You might not know exactly what's going to eat what, but I bet you have a good idea. What would eat the plants, then what would eat those things that eat the plants, and then what would eat those things, and so on. So see if you can draw out a food web for this ecosystem. And in addition to that, make sure that you're able to define ecology, ecosystem, and niche, that you can explain the organization from species to biome, that you can describe the different trophic levels and give examples of organisms in each level, that you can explain the rule of 10, and then that you can draw that food web. You should have notes on all these things when you come into class tomorrow. Have a great night.